Nō mai, haere mai. Welcome. I'm Bruce Munro, and with me is International Relations Specialist, Professor Robert Patman. And this is Global Insight. Donald Trump is the first United States President to face criminal charges. The charges and court appearance have been making endless headlines. But is it actually important? Welcome, Robert.
Morning, Bruce.
What, if anything, is the international significance of former President Trump being charged?
Well, I think the significance is potentially huge. We're talking about a country which sees itself, that's the United States, as an exemplar globally, a model political system, and a superpower. At the moment, what we're seeing with President Trump facing, there's a lot of focus at the moment on the charges relating to hush money for that was paid to a former porn star, Stormy Daniels, who apparently had some sort of liaison or affair with Mr. Trump. But there's three other avenues of illegal investigation which are getting less attention. One is into the possibility that Mr. Trump may have tried to overturn the result in Georgia in the 2020 election. And there is tape recordings involving his voice in that case. A second case relates to classified documents, 14,000 of them that he took to his home in Florida after the election. That's a very serious charge. And the third thing relates to Manhattan's Attorney General looking into irregularities within his business organisation, the Trump organisation, which apparently on a systemic basis has understated its assets for tax purposes. So there's a lot of legal investigations underway.
At the moment, it seems that all this publicity is just helping his re-election chances.
Yep.
Globally, who would stand to win and who would lose from a second Trump presidency?
Well, first of all, I think Mr. Trump is getting a short-term boost from what's happening. And he, in a sense, is milking it for all it's worth. And what I mean by that is the Lincoln Project, which is an organisation which was established to re-establish the voice of centrists in the Republican Party. They've been pretty critical of Mr. Trump and the far right in the Republican Party. They pointed out yesterday, and it hasn't been disputed, that his arraignment in New York could have been done over Zoom with much less public exposure, but he chose instead to go for the route in New York, which became a media circus, a huge public coverage on a 24/7 basis for a few days. And it's seen as useful for political exposure. Mr. Trump, since the indictment, has seen his poll numbers rise rapidly, and it's de-emphasised the challenge to some extent of Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, who although he hasn't officially declared, it's no secret that he sees himself as the next contender for the Republican Party in the 2024 election. That's the short-term effect. But the longer this wears on, it may well galvanise what may be described as Mr. Trump's base. But floating voters may well be appalled by what's happening. And Mr. DeSantis may well be able to make the charge as this legal process continues. And of course, as we pointed out, it won't be over. Even if these charges involving Stormy Daniels are dismissed, the legal process, the legal investigations will continue. And I think Mr. DeSantis will be able to make the claim that at least with him representing the Republican Party, they won't go into an election on the defensive, having to fend off legal charges. So that's another thing. I think we do need to distinguish between the short-term bounce that Mr. Trump has got and the way this can gradually erode his position as a contender representing the Republican Party. Globally, I think at least Russia would certainly welcome the prospect of Mr. Trump being elected. And I think China might as well, because although China had poor relations with the Trump administration, it may well see that this would weaken the United States internationally. Although China's views of the United States are mixed, China has a hierarchical view of the world, is conscious that America's number one, and does have respect for the American economy, although it doesn't like to announce it from the rooftops. And also it's got a huge commitment, huge stake in the American economy working reasonably well, because it is its biggest export market. So China's mixed views, but I think Mr. Putin's supporters would love to see either DeSantis or Trump win the White House, because both of them have indicated they would not continue to support Ukraine. In other words, they would give up on resisting an illegal invasion by Russia, which is music to the ears of Mr. Putin.
That's quite significant, isn't it? What lessons are there for New Zealand from the state of US politics?
I think there are domestic and international lessons. We are talking about Mr. Trump. He lost the popular election by 2.9 million votes in 2016, but still became president. So one lesson I would draw from this is that America's political model for other democracies has diminished in stature. I don't think New Zealand or many other democracies would now see America as the democratic model they would aspire to evolve towards. We have proportional representation in this country, MMP system, and on the whole it's delivered broadly based and quite effective governance. So there's a domestic thing there. I think, if anything, what's happened in the United States and these recent developments underline it, have reinforced belief that we may not always have it right on everything, but generally I think our political system, in comparison, is in reasonable shape. Internationally, there is a big lesson here for New Zealand. We are at the moment debating whether we should be an associate member or partial member of AUKUS. Now, AUKUS was set up to counter Chinese assertiveness by, quote, defending the rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific, unquote. If Mr. Trump or Mr. DeSantis become president in 2024, that has huge implications for the viability of AUKUS. And in other words, we're not talking about it in this country, we're looking at it in technical terms. Should we join as a partial member on the basis we get access to information on cutting edge technology? But we also have to think, do we want to align ourselves with an organisation that could be led? It's fine when it's led by Mr. Biden, but from our point of view, but would we be comfortable with Mr. Trump or Mr. DeSantis, who have scant regard for the rules-based system? In fact, they have scant regard for anything New Zealand stands for: multilateralism, rule of law. And so that would be a big worry for us. And we need to think hard about this, because everything is fine at the moment, but America is democracy and it has elections. We have to think whether this arrangement will work well for us in the future, given the volatility of American politics at the moment.
What are the implications of the Trump case for New Zealand?
I think they're substantial. We would like to see the indictment against Mr. Trump. I think this is a bipartisan position amongst both Labour and National. We want to see that legal process pursued to its logical conclusion. That is, without interference of politics. Because after all, in New Zealand, as in the United States, both countries believe that no one should be above the law. The danger here is, though, with Mr. Trump declaring himself a contender for office, that if he becomes a candidate and gets re-elected, that may actually interfere with the 4 investigations underway, which in a sense, politics could get in the way of the legal process. And that would not be in America's interest in our judgment, and it certainly wouldn't be in the interest of other liberal democracies like New Zealand if we were aligned to countries where people were seen to be above the law.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you for watching. Catch us next time on Global Insight. Ka kite anō.